Hello everyone, happy after Christmas slash holidays, New Year's. We made it to 2021. Go us. And welcome back to the second ever movie review on my channel. I decided to go back and revisit a classic since I normally watch holiday movies during December, but I decided to launch this channel at the beginning of January, so essentially it's going to be a continuation of the holidays for me this month. So I decided to revisit a certain film that has been a top favorite of mine as far as holiday films goes for a very long time, and that is The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, I haven't actually rewatched this in over a decade, so it was interesting to go back and notice things that I did not see before as an adult. When I first discovered this movie after its release in 1993, I actually didn't end up watching this film until years later after that. And as a kid, when I first discovered it, it was kind of like watching a film that you're not supposed to watch, but you did it anyways, because that's what we did as kids. Films for me back in the 90s were mainly categorized by what actors were in them, and that's how I recognized them. So if I saw some familiar actor on the cover, usually I gravitated towards that film.
I wonder what this Arnold Schwarzenegger movie is about.
So I had no idea who actually made Nightmare Before Christmas back then, but now I do, and I do enjoy a lot of the films that are connected to the people that made Nightmare Before Christmas. The main name that is attached to this film is Tim Burton. He helped direct this film, but a lot of the work also went to Henry Selick. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right. And also Denise Novi is also attached to this film. Henry Selick, by the way, went on to make another great film, and one that I enjoy, called Coraline. And in that film, you can kind of see the similar style. They also use stop motion animation and all of that, which is very familiar if you have seen The Nightmare Before Christmas. The basic premise of this film revolves around an idea that Tim Burton originally came up with at least 10 years before the film was actually made. He just wrote a poem when he was an animator working for Disney. But that idea itself spawned for Tim Burton when he was just walking down the street and he saw some store change its signs from Halloween advertising to Christmas advertising. So it's kind of interesting to see how some movies just spawn from random ideas like that. Much of the story and motivation of the characters themselves are told through songs. So this is obviously a musical for many of the people that are familiar with the movie. And those songs were made and sung by Danny Elfman. And I think this movie is definitely memorable for these songs, and they're very catchy. When you watch this film, you just kind of want to sing along with it, and there actually is a sing-along edition for this film for that very purpose. Right away, the film opens with like the really dreary, depressing, and just weird landscape of Halloweentown. And this entire landscape was constructed in a style that is reminiscent of German Expressionism.
Those are your hands?
And like I was saying, Jack is basically a good kind of trickster character, but has desire to do more within the world that he exists in. But his obsession with this becomes his major flaw throughout the film. When rewatching this film, there was something that I immediately noticed right away with the characters and how they are dealing with their existence. They're actually dealing with some very real life issues. Jack, obviously, he appears to have depression and he wants to do more with his life. And Sally, who loves Jack, has social anxiety. She loves Jack, but she can't express her love to him, or she's like afraid to do that. And I think this is something that I haven't seen really anybody talk about before. I don't know if this was intentional design, but It's not something you see, or it's not something that I've seen done correctly in film before. And I think a lot of these issues with these characters are obviously things that people in real life can relate to. Combine all of these things that I'm talking about with the overall design and the grotesque and weird characters in this film, and you can see why Disney originally released this movie under the Touchstone Pictures label. Like, they were literally embarrassed by this film being too dark for kids, but over time they kind of changed their mind. You can definitely tell that today, since so many kids that grew up with this film are adults now, and they're constantly passing this down to their kids. So it's kind of like a cult classic that everyone knows by now and has seen, I assume. There are also many beautifully shot scenes in this film that almost require a second viewing to recognize and see all the really small details. And there is the one famous scene where Jack is singing in the cemetery about his life and wanting to do more. And you see him going across the hill with the curling tail with the moon in the background. I love that shot. And I can't imagine the time and effort it must have been to make that shot. Jack eventually discovers a portal to other holidays as the story progresses, and he accidentally falls into Christmastown. And you can see that there's other holidays, but when Jack falls into the Christmastown, immediately we hear that song, "What's This?" which is super catchy, and I remember singing that as a kid all the time. And then when he gets back from his trip, he's obsessed with the idea of Christmas and trying to figure it out. So he uses science, essentially, to kind of figure out what it's about. I think that's why this movie tends to work so well when you do watch it, because as the story is told through song, you are getting the impression that things are probably not going to go how Jack wants them to, and you want to find out what happens next. And Sally, I think, is definitely the superstar of this film, because she essentially can predict what is going to happen. She knows that something bad is going to happen, and she is unable to express that to anybody, even though she wants to. And like Santa says in the film, essentially Sally is the only sane person in Halloweentown. And she's voiced by Catherine O'Hara, and she does an amazing job voicing this character, really bringing her to life and giving her a lot of emotion and character. Ultimately, Jack fails in his entire quest, even though he kind of had good intentions, and it is pretty humorous, though, to see him providing all these toys that either want to scare kids to death or literally kill them or something, which is super dark when you think about it. What I loved overall was the creation of the character models and the different landscapes that you see throughout this film. Basically, it took years to do that, and you can see the results definitely paid off in this film. The style of the stop motion here is also very impressive. Having watched this movie again, I wonder how kids might actually react to it today. So you probably need to, at least as a parent, explain to your kids that Christmas won't be stolen by a giant skeleton, basically. And my final verdict for this movie is easily a 10 out of 10. It is amazing. And if you like musicals, if you like Disney films, if you like stop motion animation, or just holiday films, there's a little bit of everything, and I think it definitely has a lot to offer. Thanks for watching the review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be making more holiday film reviews throughout the month of January. And if you haven't seen it, I did a Star Wars holiday special review. The first review on this channel was a lot of fun to make, and I'll put a link somewhere here so you can watch that. If you did like this video thing that I made, you can click down below to do all that YouTube stuff.